My stomach plummets as if I've stepped off a cliff edge. My hands tremble violently, nearly dropping the document. A power of attorney with my forged signature. The architectural plans lying beside it twist the knife deeper. Detailed drawings showing my bedroom converted to a nursery, with VP bedroom baby's room scrawled in the margin. In the corner, another sketch labeled grandmother's suite, their euphemism for our unfinished basement storage area with its concrete floors and exposed pipes. I've just returned from meeting with Catherine's attorney about my $8 million inheritance to discover my own son Ethan plans to relegate me to the basement while they take over my bedroom. For 30 years, I gave everything to my son. I poured my life into raising him, working multiple jobs, nursing him through countless illnesses, sacrificing my own dreams to pay for his education. I even gave up having more children, surrendered my own life so he could have a better one. The ache of betrayal burns like acid in my chest. The day before, when I told Ethan I'd lost my job, he cut me off mid-sentence, his face darkening with sudden anger. "Why would you suddenly lose that job? That was $8,000 a month. What are you planning to do now? Just sit around freeloading?" Any joy I'd felt coming home vanished instantly. Did he think I'd intentionally lost my job just to burden them? His words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. I didn't lash out. I understood the pressure he faced from his in-laws, people who never thought much of our family. Nicole, my daughter-in-law, came from better stock with her university professor mother and government official father. To them, their daughter had married beneath her station. "Didn't you say Nicole's planning to get pregnant soon?" I asked, trying to offer something valuable. I thought I'd come back to support her during pregnancy and help with the baby afterward. Nicole's expression turned ice cold. "Postpartum recovery requires professional care," she said flatly. "You were just a housekeeper. What would you know about that?" Her mother, Susan, shot me a dismissive look. Taking care of a newborn isn't just diapers and bottles. It's a science. You need actual training. This isn't something amateurs can handle. Their seamless condescension made it crystal clear they'd already decided I was an unfit caregiver, nothing but a burden, an embarrassment. To keep peace, I forced a smile. "If everything's already arranged, I won't get in the way." Susan rolled her eyes. "Fine, but you'll cover the cost of the nanny and baby nurse. I'll handle hiring and coordination." That one line left me speechless, a tight knot forming in my chest. My son jumped right in. "Exactly, Mom. You never should have lost that job. Our expenses are about to double. You really ought to keep working." That's when reality hit me like ice water. They never wanted me home to rest. They just needed my steady paycheck funneled into their household. I was nothing but a walking ATM to them. "I'm 58, I said, my voice hardening. "I think it's time to get some rest and retire." "Retired?" Nicole laughed bitterly. "You don't even have a pension. What retirement are you talking about?" Her words knocked the air from my lungs. "I wanted to pay into a retirement plan years ago. You all told me to save that money for your mortgage. Instead, now you throw that in my face?" Nicole tossed her hair. "That's because your income was pathetic. Who told you to buy a house you couldn't afford? You should have planned better." Ethan raised his voice. "Enough, Mom. Nicole's trying to get pregnant. You're just stressing her out. This is when we need money most, and you should be helping. You're still in great shape. There's no reason you can't work another 20 years. Save the retirement talk for when you're 80. Another 20 years?" I froze, hollowed by a wave of sadness beyond words. After everything I'd given, every sacrifice, every hour worked, every dollar earned, I was still just a cash machine to them. Now, standing in my kitchen with the forged documents, I see it all clearly. Their talk of respect was just manipulation to keep me working. When Ethan was in college, I left everything to work as a live-in housekeeper for Catherine, saving enough to buy them a house they never paid a cent toward. Yet the deed bears only their names. I steady my breathing, straightening my spine. They thought I was a weak old woman too tired to fight back. They'd forgotten who raised them. A woman who sacrificed everything but never surrendered her dignity. What they don't know is that yesterday, before coming home, I'd met with Catherine's attorney. They have no idea about the $8 million sitting in my newly established trust fund. They think they're planning my future. They have no idea I'm about to take control of my own. My hands shook as I slid the forged documents back into the folder, my chest tight with the effort to appear normal. I needed space to think. I slipped out the back door, drove to the small park 3 blocks away, and sat beneath an old oak tree as memories flooded back. I was 28, volunteering at the city's child welfare center, when I first saw Ethan, barely a year old, frail as a kitten, lips tinged with blue, his tiny body barely clinging to life. The center director explained, Ethan had been born with a severe congenital heart defect. His birth parents had abandoned him in a dumpster. A passerby heard his faint cries and brought him to the hospital, who eventually transferred him to the orphanage. Something about him drew me in. Maybe it was the way his eyes, full of fear and longing, clung to mine when I held him, or perhaps because I'd lost my own mother when very young, and watching a child suffer felt unbearable. My then husband, Richard, and I decided to adopt Ethan. From that moment, we crossed the country searching for specialists, doing everything to save his life. I remember counting out pills 3 times daily, measuring medications down to the milliliter. The $32,452 in medical debt we accumulated that first year alone forced me to pick up night shifts at a 24-hour diner just to make minimum payments. 2 years after bringing Ethan home, Richard changed. He grew tired of raising someone else's child and wanted a biological child of his own. His ultimatum was clear: send Ethan back to the orphanage or raise him alone. I didn't hesitate. I chose. His condition remained unstable. Terrified that returning to the orphanage would mean delayed treatment, or worse, I worked double shifts. Sometimes 3 jobs simultaneously. At night, I'd sit at the kitchen table, eyes burning, making handmade crafts to sell at local fairs for extra income. Somehow, through those desperate years, I kept him afloat. He survived, recovered, and eventually became as healthy as any other boy. He even made it to college. I never told him the truth about his past. Not to lie, but because I didn't want to burden him. He was already a sensitive, insecure child. I couldn't bear him carrying the weight of knowing he was first abandoned by his birth parents, then rejected by his adoptive father. I wanted him to believe the world could still be kind, that real love existed. When Ethan was accepted to college, first in our family, I took a live-in housekeeper position with Catherine Brighton, a wealthy widow. With room and board covered, I could send almost my entire salary to support him. Over 12 years, I saved $107,000, every penny earmarked for Ethan's first home. When he graduated and proposed to Nicole, I gave them all my savings. On closing day, my hand cramped signing the cashier's check as they hugged me with tears, promising that someday they'd take care of me the way I'd cared for them. The deed had only their names. I didn't mind. I just wanted Ethan to have the stability I never had. I stayed with Catherine even as she grew ill. I was more than her housekeeper by then. I was her companion. She taught me piano, discussed politics and literature with me, treated me like a friend rather than a servant. When she passed 6 months ago, her attorney contacted me with news that changed everything. Catherine had left me her entire estate, valued at just over $8 million. My phone vibrated with a text from Ethan. "Where are you? We need to finish discussing the senior facility arrangements." A strange calm settled over me. While I'd been meeting with Catherine's attorney yesterday, learning about my inheritance, my family had been planning to ship me off to work as a janitor in a retirement home, converting my bedroom to a nursery, and forging my signature on financial documents. Never had I imagined Ethan would become this calculating person. As furious as I was, I felt a flicker of relief. Thank God, I'd never mentioned the inheritance. If they knew about the $8 million already legally transferred to me, I could only imagine how much uglier this would become. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I called Catherine's attorney. James, it's Victoria Parker. I've made a decision about the house purchase. I'm ready to move forward immediately, and I need another favor. Can you recommend a good private investigator? I need to look into some forged documents. As I hung up, another text came from Ethan. Mom, you're being childish. Come home now so we can finish making arrangements. I took a deep breath, straightened my spine, and typed back, I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I returned, they were waiting, Ethan, Nicole, and Susan seated at the dining room table like a tribunal. The folder with the renovation plans was nowhere in sight. Finally, Susan said, not hiding her impatience. We've been waiting to finish our discussion. Yes, I said, my voice calmer than it had been in years. Let's finish this. I looked at them, these people who thought they could discard me like an outdated appliance, and something shifted inside me. I was done being the selfless mother who got stepped on, done swallowing my pride. I've been thinking about your suggestions, I said, watching their faces relax as they thought I would comply, and I've decided that I will be moving out. Nicole's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Clearly, they hadn't expected me to agree so easily. That's sensible, she said cautiously. The senior residence can provide everything you need, and the work arrangement is very fair for someone in your position. I smiled slightly. Oh, I won't be going to any senior residence. I've made other arrangements. Ethan frowned. What other arrangements? You don't have any money. I have enough, I said simply. I'm leaving today. I've already packed what matters to me. Their faces registered shock, then suspicion, then anger in quick succession. You're not thinking clearly, Susan cut in. Where exactly do you think you're going to go? That's no longer your concern, I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. Ethan's face darkened. Mom, stop this nonsense. We're trying to help you. I almost laughed at the audacity. Help me by forging my signature on a power of attorney? By planning to move me into the basement while converting my bedroom to a nursery? That kind of help? The blood drained from their faces. They hadn't expected me to find those documents. You went through our private papers? Nicole sputtered, trying to shift blame. No more private than my signature you forged, I countered. Ethan stood up, his face twisted in anger. That was for your own good. You've never been good with money or decisions. We're just trying to make sure you're taken care of. By sending me to scrub toilets at a senior facility, that's your idea of taking care of me. You've always worked. Why should that suddenly change? He shouted. Do you know how it looks to Nicole's family, having a mother who was just a housekeeper? The truth finally laid bare. I was an embarrassment to them, a stain on their social climbing aspirations. I took a deep breath, feeling oddly liberated. I see. Well, I won't embarrass you anymore. I'm leaving now. I turned toward the stairs to get my suitcase, but Susan's voice stopped me. Victoria, you're being ridiculous. Where will you go? How will you support yourself? No one's going to hire a woman your age for anything decent. I turned back, my posture straighter than it had been in years. I managed to raise a child alone from age 30. I worked 3 jobs while paying for surgeries. I put my son through college. I think I'll manage just fine. I went upstairs and returned with my suitcase, already packed with essentials. I'd had a feeling this morning that I might need to leave quickly. As I headed for the door, Ethan blocked my path. You can't just walk out? What about us? What about our plans? Nicole is trying to get pregnant. I looked at my son, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger. That's no longer my concern. I echoed Susan's earlier words. Good luck with your plans. You won't need to worry about me anymore. I walked past him and stepped outside. Their angry shouts followed me. You're disowning your own son? You're not even human. Don't get too proud, Victoria. When you're old and sick and no one wants to take care of you, let's see how far that independence gets you. No one's going to hire a woman your age. When you hit rock bottom, don't come crawling back to us. I paused, turned around slowly, and looked at them with cool detachment. You should be more worried about yourselves, I said calmly. Don't forget the house you're living in. That house you treat like your birthright was bought with every penny I scraped together. If I ever decide to take it back, don't be so sure you'll still have a place to live. Nicole stormed to the doorway, pointing a finger at my face, seething with rage. Don't you dare touch this house. It's registered in my and Ethan's names. It's legally ours. The more she shouted, the steadier I felt. Fine, I said, my voice unwavering. Then hear this. I don't care if I have to spend the price of 2 houses. I will not let this house stay in the hands of ungrateful leeches. Nicole's eyes widened in disbelief before she burst into mocking laughter. You've lost your mind. 2 houses? You probably don't even have $1,000 to your name. This house is ours. You're just some washed-up maid trying to bite off more than you can chew. Get lost. People like you deserve to rot on the street. With that, she slammed the door in my face. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I simply turned toward my car, pulled out my phone, and started browsing listings for luxury homes in the city's top neighborhoods. A bitter smirk played at my lips. If I didn't move into the best house in town, I'd be doing a disservice to the $8 million sitting comfortably in my trust fund. That night, I checked into the Westlake Grand, the most exclusive 5-star hotel downtown. The marble lobby gleamed under crystal chandeliers as I approached the front desk, conscious of my simple clothing and practical handbag, relics of my housekeeper life. I'd like your finest suite, please, I said, sliding Catherine's platinum credit card across the counter. For at least 2 weeks, the receptionist glanced between me and the card, confusion flickering across her face before professionalism took over. Of course, Mrs. Parker, we'd be delighted to accommodate you. As the elevator climbed to the 20th floor, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. I barely recognized myself. My posture hunched from years of deferring to others, my hair pulled back in the practical style I'd worn for decades, my clothes serviceable rather than stylish. But something in my eyes had changed. There was a clarity there I hadn't seen in years. The suite took my breath away, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city lights, a living room larger than my bedroom at Ethan's house, a marble bathroom with a tub I could swim in. My body sank into the plush sofa as 30 years of tension began to uncoil from my shoulders. I opened my laptop and called James, Catherine's attorney. Victoria, you look well. Enjoying the hotel? It's a start, I said. Has the trust been fully transferred? Yes. The full $8,165,493 is now in your accounts. Catherine was very specific that there should be no delays or conditions. She was always thoughtful that way, I said, feeling a pang of grief for my friend and employer. She understood what it meant to be underestimated. The next morning, I embarked on a personal transformation. First stop, Elaine's, the exclusive salon Catherine had frequented. 4 hours later, I emerged with my silver-streaked dark hair styled in an elegant bob that framed my face, enhancing rather than hiding the laugh lines around my eyes. Next, I visited Nordstrom's personal shopping service. The stylist, initially hesitant when she saw my shabby clothing, became remarkably attentive once I mentioned my budget. I need a complete wardrobe, I explained. Everything from casual to formal, with an emphasis on classic pieces. By afternoon, I had 12 new outfits, 3 pairs of leather shoes, and accessories that complimented rather than apologized for my age. The total came to just over $7,000 more than I'd spent on myself in the past 5 years combined. That evening, dressed in tailored charcoal slacks and a cream silk blouse, I contacted a real estate agent recommended by the hotel concierge. Within minutes, Monica Chen called me back. "Mrs. Parker, I understand you're interested in luxury properties. What exactly are you looking for?" "Something exclusive, preferably in a gated community. I'd like to see the Willows or Victoria Heights, if there are any listings available." A brief pause. "Those are very high-end neighborhoods. The starting price is well over $1 million. Would you perhaps prefer some more moderate options?" I smiled to myself. Even with my new clothes and hairstyle, people still made assumptions. "No, I'm specifically interested in those neighborhoods. I'd like to see the lakeside villas tomorrow if possible." The next morning, I arrived at the luxury real estate showroom in a car service. The grand lobby was bustling with prospective buyers, despite the $1 million starting prices. Monica Chen approached me, her young face bright with an eager smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker. I'm Monica Chen. Would you like me to walk you through the project details?" I followed her toward the display area, but we hadn't made it more than a few steps when a sharp voice rang out. "Who's handling client screening today? Do we just let anyone walk in now?" I looked up, and there she was, Chloe, Susan's niece. We'd only met a few times, but she had left a lasting impression. A classic social climber with an attitude that dripped arrogance in every word. Before I could react, she was already striding over, heels clicking confidently, eyes full of disdain. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" I glanced at her coolly. "I'm here to view a property. Is there a problem?" She stepped in front of me, blocking my path with a sneer. "A housekeeper? You think you can afford this place? Don't tell me you're just here for the free coffee. I've seen plenty like you pretending to be buyers, just looking to snag some free snacks." People nearby began glancing over, whispering, their expressions carrying that uncomfortable mix of judgment and curiosity. Monica spoke gently, trying to diffuse the situation. "Chloe, I'm not busy. I can show this lady around." But Chloe shoved her aside. "And who do you think you are, lecturing me on how to do my job?" Then she waved over 2 security guards. "Escort this visitor out now." The showroom fell silent. All eyes were on us. I raised my hand calmly, stopping the guards before they could approach. "I came here to view a property. On what grounds are you kicking me out? Where's your manager?" Just then, a young man in a crisp white shirt approached quickly. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Alex, the sales manager. Is there an issue I can assist with?" Before I could speak, Chloe jumped in. "Alex, she's just here for the freebies." I was about to have security remove her. Alex frowned slightly. "Ma'am, would you mind showing us some form of financial verification?" "As you know, this is an invitation-only showcase." Without hesitation, I pulled out a folder. They already verified my documents at the entrance. Chloe snatched the folder and flipped it open dramatically. $5 million pre-approval? "Are you kidding me?" she shouted loud enough for half the showroom to hear. "She's a housekeeper. There's no way she has that kind of money. This has to be fake." I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and held it up for them to see. Monica leaned in, counting softly. 1 million. Oh my God, over 8 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Damn, she's got serious money." Chloe's face drained of color, cycling rapidly from red to pale green to ghost white. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. But she kept pushing. "That banking app has to be fake. There's no way she has that kind of money." Alex's face darkened. "Chloe, that's enough." Then he turned to me with a respectful tone. "Ma'am, I truly apologize. This has clearly been a mistake. I'll assign our most experienced client manager to assist you." No need, I said, turning to Monica. She's perfectly fine. I want her to show me the property. Alex looked uneasy. Actually, she just started, still in training. But I like her, I said firmly. I'm buying the house today, and I want to do it through her. Moments later, I stood before a magnificent villa with soaring ceilings, a spacious garden, and a sunroom spanning over 200 square feet. I'll take this one, I said, without hesitation. Let's get the paperwork started. Monica could barely contain her joy. Mom, this will be the first sale I've ever closed. You're my lucky charm. As I reviewed the paperwork, whispers circulated behind me. Damn, she just signed without a second thought. $1.5 million didn't even blink. Then Chloe's voice cut through. Oh, you have no idea. She's not your average housekeeper. No? Then what is she? She's one of those living assistants for wealthy old men. You know, not just dusting and mopping, if you catch my drift. I set down the contract and turned toward Monica. Monica, could you get Alex again? I'd like to purchase another property. The room went completely silent. Monica's eyes widened, her voice trembling. Ma'am, you're sure you want another one? That's right. One to live in, one as an investment. Alex returned swiftly, his smile brighter than before. What can I do for you? I've confirmed the first property. I'd like to add a second unit, but I expect your team to address the inappropriate behavior of certain staff members. Alex's smile faded as his gaze landed on Chloe. Chloe, are you causing trouble again? Apologize to the client now. Chloe lifted her chin defiantly. Why should I apologize? She used to be a housekeeper who caters only to rich old men. Her son said it himself. I stared directly at her. You're saying my son told you that? Then let me tell you something. He also once said your portfolio of closed deals didn't come from your skills, but from nights you spent in bed with clients. Is that true? Chloe's face drained of color. You're lying? That's slander. Oh, didn't you just slander me? Now you suddenly understand what defamation means. Alex's expression turned grim. Chloe, that's enough. Security, escort her out. As of today, you're terminated. I raised my hand. Hold on, she publicly defamed me, and I'm not letting this slide. I took out my phone and dialed. Hello? Yes. This is the police department. I'd like to file a report for defamation and public harassment. 10 minutes later, 2 officers issued Chloe a formal warning. If she didn't apologize publicly, I could press charges. Cornered and shaking with rage, Chloe finally mumbled through clenched teeth. I'm sorry. She shot me one last hateful glance before storming off. By the end of the day, I'd signed contracts for both properties, paid in full, without even blinking. Monica stood beside me, eyes shimmering with emotion. Ma'am, I can't thank you enough. 3 months without a sale, and today, 2 units back to back. You're honestly my miracle. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, as if all the humiliation and bitterness had been swept away like dust outside my new villa doors. That evening, my phone rang. Ethan, what the hell did you do to ruin Chloe's job? Her whole family is coming after us, demanding answers. I answered breezily, let them come. That's your problem now. We're done. By the way, his tone shifted to calculated interest. So Mom, who's your new employer? They must be seriously loaded. I laughed silently to myself. There it was again, the scent of money, and he was sniffing around like a bloodhound. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with you. Ethan, let me say it one more time. We're done for good. With that, I ended the call and blocked every number from him, Nicole, and their entire family. That afternoon, I visited a high-end piano showroom downtown, browsing for a grand piano. Catherine had rekindled my childhood love for playing, teaching me during our years together. Now I wanted music to fill my new home. I had just settled onto the bench of a magnificent Steinway, preparing to test the keys, when the front doors swung open and a flurry of footsteps echoed through the space. In walked Susan with her circle of society friends, their voices loud with self-importance. "What kind of store is this?" Susan scoffed. "Letting just anyone sit down and bang on a piano? How unprofessional." Her eyes landed on me, sarcasm dripping from her smile. "Victoria, did you even wash your hands before touching that instrument? Weren't you in housekeeping all these years? God knows what kind of germs you've brought in. Who would have thought such an expensive piano could be so casually contaminated?" Her friends chuckled and whispered, eyeing me with barely disguised contempt. "So that's the housekeeper-in-law you mentioned?" one asked loudly. "Can't afford to buy one, so she comes here just to pretend. How embarrassing." A woman with hair piled into a dramatic bun gave me a disdainful once-over. Nothing more irritating than someone trying to act classy while carrying knockoff handbags. The two sales associates exchanged uncomfortable glances. One approached me with a warm, professional smile. "Please feel free to continue trying the piano, ma'am. That's exactly what they're here for. No purchase required." I nodded politely, then turned back to the sheet music, trying to ease the growing tension. The other associate approached Susan's group. "Ladies, welcome. Is there a particular model you'd like to see?" Susan shot me a frosty glance. "We were going to look, but now I'm not so sure. Clearly this store doesn't care about its instruments or clients." I smiled calmly at the associate. "I'll need a bit more time to try a few. I fully intend to make a purchase today." The bun-haired woman scoffed and dropped into a nearby sofa. "Sure you do. I'll just sit right here and watch you slither off without buying anything." Susan tugged her friend's arm. "Come on, let's go somewhere else. Just being near people like this puts me in a bad mood." But I knew better. Susan had already heard from Chloe that I'd bought 2 villas. She was clearly afraid I might prove her wrong again. Her friend wasn't so easily swayed. "I'm staying right here. I won't sleep tonight if I don't see this woman fall flat on her face." I chose Moonlight Sonata and let my fingers fall gently on the keys. The notes floated through the room, soft and steady. The bun-haired woman twisted her mouth in mockery. "What even is that? Sounds like noise. Who taught her to play? She thinks she belongs in a piano store with that mess? Give me a break." But the sales associate by my side started clapping, genuine admiration in his eyes. "Ma'am, that was beautiful. Honestly, that's one of the most moving renditions of Moonlight Sonata I've heard in a long time." Just then, a few young people stepped into the showroom. They stood behind me quietly listening. The moment I lifted my fingers, a round of spontaneous applause erupted. "Wow, that was incredible. I've studied piano for years and still can't bring out that level of emotion in Moonlight Sonata. You captured the whole dreamlike mood so effortlessly. You're amazing." Susan stood nearby, her brow furrowing in visible confusion. She couldn't seem to understand how someone she'd always looked down on could play with such grace and skill. The truth was, I owed this moment to Catherine. She came from a prestigious family, yet treated me more like a sister than an employee. She invited me to learn music, painting, literature, and I studied with dedication, grateful for her generosity. Over the years, she hadn't just changed my lifestyle, she'd transformed my entire spirit. I continued playing while the bun-haired woman's face soured under the growing praise. In one last desperate attempt to save face, she snapped, "So what if you can play one song? Big deal. If you're really that impressive, pay for the piano right now." I had already made my choice. Calmly, I handed my card to the associate. "Thank you, ma'am," he said cheerfully. "That'll be..." I entered my PIN, transaction approved. "May I have your name for the invoice?" he asked. "Victoria Parker." The bun-haired woman blanched, her head jerking toward Susan. "You said she worked for someone else, that the villas she bought weren't even hers." Susan walked over, her expression caught between disbelief and something far more tangled. You bought this piano yourself? And those 2 villas, those were yours too? I smiled. The invoices and contracts have my name on them. If they're not mine, then whose would they be? Yours? Her face twisted, a storm of shock, envy, and bitter regret flickering across it. Victoria, you were just a housekeeper. Where did all that money come from? Every dollar I spend was earned legally and rightfully. My voice sharp, cold. Susan scoffed. Oh, please. You must have done something shady to get it. The bun-haired woman chimed in. Yeah, maybe she's a scammer. That's how people make fast money these days. Suddenly, another woman who'd been quiet until now snapped. Scammer? Don't even joke about that. She fumbled for her phone, hand shaking. Hello, 911, I need the police. There's a con artist here. She hung up and stormed toward me, trying to grab my clothes in a fit of rage. The store staff rushed to hold her back. She was crying, shouting hysterically. She'd been swindled out of over $100,000 6 months ago and never recovered. The mere mention of scam had triggered her trauma. The police arrived quickly. To my surprise, it was the same officers I'd met at the real estate office. One raised his brows in recognition. Oh, it's you again, ma'am. Before I could speak, the hysterical woman shouted, She's a scammer, arrest her right now. The officer turned serious. Ma'am, do you have any proof of this accusation? Proof? Of course not. I'm just providing a tip. You should investigate her yourselves. I mean, how could a housekeeper afford villas and grand pianos? The officer sighed. Maybe she won the lottery. It happens. Susan jumped in. Her winning the lottery? Don't be ridiculous. She's never had a lucky day in her life. Grew up without parents, failed marriage, low-class jobs. People like her don't get lucky. They get desperate. She has no education, no career path. What else could she have done besides something shady? The officer's expression hardened. Ma'am, I advise you to watch your words. Accusations without evidence fall under defamation. Susan's face paled as she fell silent. A swirl of emotions stirred inside me. Frustration, pain, anger, but mostly clarity. Life hadn't been easy. I'd grown up alone, bent over backwards to support a son who never appreciated anything I did. And now, the people who once enjoyed my sacrifices were using my lowest points as ammunition. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward Susan so everyone could see. You don't want to see me happy? Tough luck. Looks like heaven had other plans. See the over 8 million, all legal, all mine. No dirty secrets, no tricks, just blessings you'll never understand. If that makes you sick, I hope it ruins your appetite. Susan's water cup slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor. I could almost hear the crack of her pride shattering. 8 million? How the hell do you have that kind of money? Her voice shook with panic. Then her expression twisted. Oh, now I get it. That's why you cut ties with your son. You got rich and dumped him like trash. How heartless. I turned to her, my tone unwavering. Don't twist the story, Susan. I was ready to leave every cent to them. That was my plan. But then they decided I was a burden the minute I lost my job. You tried to control my finances, forge my signature, convert my bedroom to a nursery, and put me in an unfinished basement, all while planning to ship me off to work as a janitor. You think I forgot that house you're living in? Every dollar that bought it came from me. I turned to the onlookers. Tell me, doesn't this pack of ingrates deserve everything they've lost? The crowd's eyes, once filled with gossip, now brimmed with judgment aimed squarely at Susan and her friends. Susan's face burned red. You're lying. We never said you should go work for some old man. Should I play the recording for everyone? Let them hear your exact words? Her face went pale, showing real fear. That recording is probably edited. I'm not listening to that garbage." She turned away, retreating toward the exit. "Victoria, you're cruel to the core. You'll get what's coming to you someday." With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I finally exhaled. It was over for now. But with that much money on the line, people like Susan and Ethan never stay quiet for long. What I didn't expect was how quickly Ethan would crawl back into the picture. The very next morning, a massive bouquet of flowers arrived at my villa. The card read, "Wishing you a lovely weekend. Love, your son Ethan." I nearly laughed at the shamelessness. Without hesitation, I tossed the entire bouquet into the trash, photographed it there, crushed petals, bent stems, crumpled card and all, and sent it to the gatehouse. From now on, refuse anything from this person. Also, forward him this picture. I didn't just want him rejected. I wanted him humiliated. Another 6 months passed, and I finally reclaimed the house that had once been mine through a meticulous legal process. My attorney team successfully reversed the property ownership on the grounds that I had paid for it entirely, with documented evidence of my financial contributions. The day everything was finalized, I stood in the living room, staring at the familiar curtains, watching sunlight spill across the hardwood floor. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for decades. A few days later, Nicole filed for divorce from Ethan. She signed the papers in her lawyer's office with complete composure, not uttering a single extra word. It was clear she'd seen him for who he really was, a man who whined about being wronged but never took responsibility, full of resentment, but completely devoid of self-awareness. And just like that, Ethan vanished from my life entirely. I didn't ask about where he went, and I had no interest in looking back. Years passed. Then one day, while chatting with an old friend at a cafe, she casually mentioned, "I heard Ethan ran off to Canada. He's always online bragging about how free and easy life is over there." Out of curiosity, I searched his name online. What I found was haunting. The video footage showed him disheveled and hunched beside a trash bin on a street corner, gnawing on a piece of moldy bread with vacant, unfocused eyes. Sometimes he'd break into a manic smile. Other times, he'd burst into uncontrollable sobs that tore through his whole body. He'd lost his mind. The same man who once stood in front of a camera painting me as a villain, fishing for sympathy, selling sorrow for attention, had become exactly what he deserved to be, a ghost on the margins of real life. But I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel anger anymore either. He had simply become the sum of his own choices. No amount of followers could save him. No amount of lies could keep his story standing. He lost the sympathy he'd stolen. He ruined the integrity he never valued. And eventually, life did what it always does. It caught up. As for me, I was finally done with a battle that had drained me for over 30 years. The 2 villas I'd bought on impulse during that dark chapter, I sold them during the housing market upswing and walked away with a tidy profit. What once symbolized fury and defiance had turned into the foundation of my next chapter. Eventually, I moved to a quiet lakeside town on the western edge of the city. It wasn't the most expensive neighborhood, but it was everything I'd ever wanted. Sunlight flooded the windows. My garden bloomed with wisteria and roses. The kitchen always smelled of my favorite dark roast coffee. My easel stood beneath the trees, waiting for lazy afternoons of painting. The air was clean, the world slow, and life gentle. No one called me mom anymore just to demand something. No one accused me of being cold. No one claimed I hadn't done enough. For the first time, I could hear my own breath, the music in the sunlight. For the first time, I finally belonged to myself. Sometimes people still ask me, "Do you regret adopting Ethan?" I used to think long and hard about that question, but now when I hear it, I just smile softly and shake my head. No, I say, I don't regret it. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. Learning to protect myself was the most important lesson I ever learned in the second half of my life. I was never a perfect person, never a saint, but I became something far better, a woman who finally lived for herself, and it turned out that wasn't too late at all. One crisp autumn morning, as I sat on my porch enjoying the lake view, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Monica, the young real estate agent who'd helped me buy my first villa. She had blossomed in her career, becoming one of the top agents in the region. "Victoria," she called, waving as she walked up the path. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I was showing a property nearby and remembered you lived here." "Not at all," I said, genuinely pleased to see her. "Come have some tea." As we sat watching the leaves dance across the water, Monica's expression grew serious. "I wanted to thank you properly. That day at the showroom changed my life. Watching you stand up to Chloe, seeing how you carried yourself, it taught me something important about dignity and self-worth." I smiled, thinking how circular life could be. Sometimes the people we help aren't the ones we expect to help. "That's actually why I'm here," Monica said, fidgeting with her teacup. "I'm starting a mentorship program for young women entering the workforce. Women who come from difficult backgrounds, who might not have proper guidance. Would you consider speaking to them? Your story, it could help so many people." I felt a warmth bloom in my chest, not the desperate desire for approval I'd chased for decades, but something steadier, truer. I'd be honored. The following month, I found myself standing before a group of 20 women, ranging from their early 20s to late 40s. Some were single mothers, others were working multiple jobs to support their families. All had been told at some point that they weren't enough. "I spent the first half of my life giving everything away," I began. "I poured myself into a child who wasn't mine by birth, but became mine through love and sacrifice. I don't regret the love I gave. What I regret is believing that love meant erasing myself." I told them about the hospital waiting rooms and the midnight shifts, about signing away my savings for a house where my name wasn't on the deed, about discovering forged documents and basement suites. "But I also want to tell you about Catherine," I continued, "a woman who saw me as a person, not a function, who taught me piano at 50, who left me her fortune not because I served her, but because she valued me. Sometimes, the family we choose sees us more clearly than the family we sacrifice for." When I finished speaking, a woman in the back raised her hand. "But how do we know when to draw the line? When does giving become self-destruction?" I thought about this question, remembering the exact feeling in my chest when I found those renovation plans, when I realized my own son had forged my signature. You know you've crossed that line when giving no longer feels like love, when it feels like fear, when you're afraid that without your sacrifice, you won't be worthy of connection. Real love doesn't diminish you. It doesn't leave you smaller. After the talk, women lined up to share their own stories. Stories of children who took and took, of partners who drained rather than nourished, of parents who saw them as extensions rather than individuals. I listened to each one, recognizing pieces of my own journey in theirs. That night, back at my lakeside home, I sat at my piano, Catherine's last gift, and played Moonlight Sonata under the stars. The notes felt different now, carrying not just melancholy, but a quiet triumph. I'd lost a son, but found myself. I'd lost a house, but created a home. 5 years passed like a gentle breeze. My lakeside home had become my sanctuary, not a retreat from the world, but a place to engage with it on my own terms. The garden I'd planted that first year now flourished with perennials that returned stronger each season, much like my own resilience. The mentorship program Monica and I started grew beyond our expectations. What began as occasional talks evolved into second chapter, a non-profit helping women over 50 reclaim their lives after decades of sacrifice. We offered financial literacy workshops, legal clinics for those untangling complicated family situations, and creative courses to reawaken passions long set aside. On this particular morning, I sat on my deck watching the sunrise paint the lake in amber and gold. My coffee had grown cold beside me, forgotten as I sketched the scene. Art, another gift from Catherine that I'd finally embraced fully. My phone chimed with a message from Rachel, a 62-year-old former nurse who had joined our program after discovering her husband of 40 years had secretly remortgaged their home to fund his gambling habit. "You were right," her message read. "The judge granted the financial separation order. The house is safe. I don't think I could have found the courage without second chapter. Thank you." I smiled, setting down my sketchpad. These moments, these small victories, had become the most meaningful parts of my life. Not because I needed validation, but because I recognized in these women the same awakening I had experienced. The realization that it's never too late to stand in your own power. Later that day, I welcomed a new group of women to my home for our monthly Wisdom Circle, a chance for program participants to share their journeys in a safe space. As they settled in my sunroom, I served tea in the delicate porcelain cups Catherine had left me. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to share something with you all." I brought out a folder containing dozens of letters, emails, and photographs from women who had passed through our program. 5 years ago today, I gave my first talk for what would become second chapter. I was terrified, convinced I had nothing valuable to offer, that somehow my story was too ordinary to matter. I opened a folder and displayed its contents across the table. But here's what I've learned. There is extraordinary power in ordinary lives. In recognizing patterns we've accepted as normal that are actually harmful, in saying no more, even when everyone around you insists you should continue saying yes. Marjorie, a 70-year-old former teacher whose adult daughter had systematically drained her retirement savings, picked up one of the letters. "You've created something remarkable here, Victoria." I shook my head gently. We all created this together. That's the beauty of it. When we stop pouring ourselves into people who see us as resources rather than human beings, we discover how much we have to offer the world. After our gathering, as the last guest departed, my phone rang. My lawyer, James. "Victoria," he said, his voice uncharacteristically tentative. "I have news about Ethan. He's back in the country. He's been in a psychiatric facility in Montreal for the past 3 years. Apparently, he's been asking to contact you." My hand instinctively tightened around the phone. Despite all the healing, the mention of his name still triggered a physical response, though now more of a distant echo than sharp pain. "What does he want?" They didn't specify. They're respecting patient confidentiality. They simply asked if you would be open to communication, a letter perhaps. They emphasized there's no pressure. I thanked James and promised to think about it. After hanging up, I walked to the lake's edge and sat on my small wooden dock. The water lapped gently against the pilings, a soothing rhythm that had carried me through many moments of reflection. That evening, I played Beethoven on the piano Catherine had taught me to love. As the music filled my home, I thought about the nature of transformation, how we're never truly finished becoming ourselves. The next morning, I made my decision. I wrote a brief letter to the facility. I am open to receiving a letter from Ethan. I make no promises about responding. Please ensure he understands these boundaries. Victoria Parker. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived. I recognized Ethan's handwriting immediately, though shakier than I remembered. I placed it unopened on my desk and went about my day, teaching a watercolor class, having lunch with Monica, working in the garden until my knees reminded me of my age. Only when evening came did I finally open the letter. Victoria, it began. not mom, just my name. The doctors say writing this letter is part of my recovery, but I've drafted it 100 times and still don't know what to say. Sorry seems insulting in its inadequacy. Thank you feels presumptuous. I have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder with psychotic features. It doesn't excuse what I did, but it helps explain the person I became. I'm on medication now. I see clearly for the first time in years. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not asking for money or reconciliation. I only wanted you to know that in my clearest moments, I understand the magnitude of what you did for me, saving my life, choosing me when no one else would, sacrificing your own dreams for mine, and I understand the magnitude of how I repaid you. The psychiatrists asked about my earliest memories. I told them about a hospital room. I couldn't have been more than 4. I was scared of the machines, the doctors, the pain, but you were there, holding my hand, telling me stories about brave little birds who flew farther than anyone thought possible. I remember feeling safe despite everything, because you were there. That's all. I won't contact you again, unless you wish it. Ethan. I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time, watching the sunset cast long shadows across my living room. Then I placed it back in its envelope and tucked it into a drawer of my desk. Not hidden away, not prominently displayed, just there. Another piece of my story, neither defining nor diminishing me. I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't forgive, but because some chapters are complete in themselves. Some journeys continue separately after intertwining for a time. A year later, as I celebrated my 65th birthday surrounded by friends from second chapter, I received a small package. Inside was a hand-carved wooden bird, delicate, wings outstretched in flight. The note simply read, "For the brave bird stories. No response expected. I'm doing well." I placed the little bird on my windowsill where morning light would catch it. Not as a monument to the past, but as a reminder that healing takes many forms, follows no predictable path. As our organization grew, expanding to 3 more cities, I was invited to speak at a national conference on senior women's economic empowerment. Standing at the podium before hundreds of advocates and policymakers, I felt none of the nervousness that might once have plagued me. The statistics tell us that women over 60 are the fastest growing homeless population in America. I began. They tell us that financial abuse of older women often goes unreported, especially when perpetrated by adult children. They tell us that women who've spent decades as caregivers often lack retirement savings of their own. I paused, looking out at the sea of attentive faces. But what statistics can't tell you is how it feels to discover that the people you sacrificed everything for see you as nothing but a resource. They can't tell you about the moment when you realize you've been writing yourself out of your own life story. And they can't tell you about the extraordinary freedom that comes from finally putting yourself first. That evening in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and began typing. I gave everything to my son, Ethan, for 30 years. I poured my life into raising him, working tirelessly, nursing him through illness, paying for his education. 6 months later, my memoir, The Price of Betrayal, became a bestseller, not just as a story of revenge, but because it spoke to a universal truth. It's never too late to become the protagonist of your own life. The most important part was the woman I had become at 65, stronger, wiser, and more fully alive than I had ever been at 30. The woman who had learned that it's never too late to rescue yourself. The woman who had discovered that the greatest act of love is sometimes walking away. The woman who had finally understood that she was worthy of the same care she had so freely given to others. That woman, I had come to realize, had been waiting inside me all along, patient, resilient, ready to emerge when I finally gave her permission to exist. And now that she was here, she had so much living to do.